Well, hello, adult Sunday school leader. My wife and I made it back safely from Clemson, South Carolina. In fact, you can see I've got a new Clemson mug adorning my shelf. Are you familiar with the Jonas Brothers? They were this boy band. They formed in 2005, and they became extremely popular, only to split in 2013 due to some creative and personal differences. Tensions rose as the brothers struggled with the direction of their music and the pressures of fame. But after a 6-year break during which each pursued individual projects, they reunited in 2019, releasing a new album called Happiness Begins, and they embarked on a tour. They credited open communication and time spent apart, helping them resolve their issues. Well, that's probably not the best analogy, but it's similar to the story of the brothers that we started looking at last week. They were together, and then there was a conflict. Today we're going to learn that they spent a few decades apart and then reconciled. Of course, I'm talking about Jacob and Esau. It's the topic of this week's lesson as we continue in that unit called Negotiating Family Conflict. This is lesson number 4 on Jacob and Esau, family rivalry. The focal passage is Genesis 27, some select verses there, as well as some verses out of Genesis 33. The point of this lesson is showing humility is critical to restoring a broken relationship. Well, at the end of last week's lesson, Rebekah had overheard her husband Isaac tell their older son Esau to fix him some wild game as he was going to give Esau a blessing. Now, we discussed last week the significance of that blessing. Rebekah then told her favorite son Jacob to fetch a couple of goats so she could fix Jacob's dad his favorite meal. And the plan was for Jacob to pose as his older brother and for him to receive the blessing instead of Esau. Now, Isaac's eyesight was very weak, and so Esau was hairy, and Jacob, he had smooth skin. So if Isaac reached out to touch Jacob, he would immediately know that he was not dealing with the correct son. So while Esau was out hunting game, Rebekah and Jacob continued with their scheme. So Rebekah took some of the best clothes of Esau and dressed Jacob with them. She then put on goat skins on his hands so that if Isaac touched him, he would feel the hairiness of his hands. And then Jacob went in with the food to give to his father Isaac so that he could receive his father's blessing that was meant for brother Esau. Now, at first, Isaac, he wasn't sure. He said that who he was talking to had the voice of Jacob. So Isaac reached out and touched the goat skins, and he drew Jacob closer, and he smelled him, and he could smell the scent of Esau since Jacob was wearing Esau's clothes. Now, during this whole ordeal, Jacob lied several times as Isaac questioned him about who he was, about his identity. So Isaac blessed Jacob, thinking he was Esau. Now in Genesis 27, verse 29, he told Jacob, "May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. May be Lord over your brothers, and may sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." So just as soon as Jacob left Isaac's tent, in came Esau with the food. Isaac said, "Now who are you?" And Esau replied, "Hey, I'm your firstborn son." This really upset Isaac because it said that he trembled violently and he wondered out loud who it was that was just in there and received the blessing. Of course, this upset Esau and he begged his father to bless him as well. Well, that takes us to our first set of scriptures in Genesis 27, verses 35 through 37. Isaac must have soon realized that he had been duped because he told Esau that his brother came in deceitfully and received the blessing. Do you remember last week when we talked about the meaning of the names of Esau and Jacob? Jacob's name literally means he who grasps the heel, or deceiver. That's why in verse 36 Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob because he has deceived me twice?" Both father and son were upset. Esau was bitter because the blessing that was due to him was taken by his brother. However, Isaac's emotions may have had multiple layers. First, you got to remember from last week's lesson that the blessing was irrevocable. Isaac understood that the blessing that he gave Jacob could not be taken back or transferred to Esau. Also, his trembling most likely reflected his shock in realizing the extent of his son Jacob's deception. That had to have been very disappointing to Isaac. And if Isaac knew that God had told Rebekah that the older son would serve the younger, Isaac may have realized that he was attempting to thwart God's plan by blessing Esau. And we know that when you attempt to thwart God's plan, that never has a good outcome. Well, Isaac may have feared the consequences of this deception as well. He knew that the rivalry between his sons was only going to intensify, which is proven out in in Esau's statement in verse 41 when he said that after Isaac dies, after my daddy dies, Esau, I am going to kill my brother. Have you ever thought about what is appealing about holding a grudge? Here's some of the things that might go through one's mind. You keep reminding yourself how you deserve better. And there's something evil and but satisfying in an evil way, about plotting and planning revenge and nursing that hurt. All that can be comforting in a weird kind of way. So that's some reasons that people hold on to grudges. Here's some quotes about grudges and revenge. Alfred Hitchcock said, "Revenge is sweet and not fattening." Frank Sinatra said, "The best revenge is massive success." Now here's one that might seem a little odd to you. This quote is, "I never forget. I never forgive. I can wait. I find it very easy to harbor a grudge. I have scores to settle." That's by author Tom Wolfe. Here's another quote. "You figure that time could heal all wounds, but some people just really hold a crazy grudge." And that's the drummer of Guns N' Roses, Steven Adler. In what ways could Jacob and Esau both rationalize their actions? Well, Esau could think of how Jacob did him wrong and took what was rightfully his. That mama's boy, he's always schemed against me. And then Jacob, he could think, well, Esau really never appreciated what he had. He sold me that bowl of stew, or he sold me his birthright for that bowl of stew. He would have squandered that blessing anyway. Besides, you've got to get what you can in this world. Well, the story of these brothers is somewhat reminiscent to me about Cain and Abel's story that we studied a few weeks ago, don't you think? Well, there are a lot of things that happen between our first and our second set of scriptures, but there's so many stories that we can't really tell everything in our Sunday school hour. But here's some events that I believe play a part of where our lesson is headed this week. So let's quickly summarize some of those things. So Rebekah warned Jacob that Esau was planning to kill him, so she sent him to stay with her brother Laban until Esau's anger subsided. And here we get the story of Jacob falling in love with his cousin Rachel. Well, talk about family dysfunction. And he had to work 7 years for her, had to work for Laban for 7 years. But when he wakes up after the wedding night, he discovers that he's married her sister Leah instead. And Laban told Jacob, "You want to marry Rachel? Well, you'll have to work another 7 years for her." So he did that. The Bible says that Leah had weak eyes, meaning poor eyesight. Now, there are some parallels here between Jacob getting the blessing and Leah marrying Jacob. So think about this. Jacob went into Dad's tent. The dad had poor eyesight, knowing that Isaac intended to bless his brother. He disguised himself to steal the blessing meant for Esau. And this whole ordeal was orchestrated by his mother. Now, Leah had weak eyes, had poor eyesight. She went into Jacob's tent, knowing that Jacob had intended to marry Rachel and stole the marriage meant for her sister. And this ordeal was orchestrated by her father. You see, God here is beginning to teach Jacob what it feels like to be deceived. The deceiver is being deceived. Jacob is reaping what he has sown, as Galatians 6:7 states. Laban continually cheated Jacob out of wages, so Jacob and his wives decide to return to Jacob's home. Well, on their journey, they encounter Esau and hundreds of men. Now, what's the last thing that Jacob remembers about Esau? He's going to kill me. Okay, so that brings us up to our next passage, Genesis 33, verses 1 through 4. Can you imagine some of the thoughts and emotions that must have been in Jacob's mind when he saw Esau coming with such a large group of men? Did he think, oh my goodness, I'm a goner now. He vowed to kill me, now he's going to kill me and my entire family. Why did I treat him that way? I shouldn't have listened to mommy. Okay, but here's what Jacob did, though. He demonstrated both bravery and humility. Instead of putting his wives and children in the front kind of as a buffer and put himself in the back, he exposed himself by him going first. And as he approached Esau, he bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached Esau, which showed his deference to his brother. In Jacob and Esau's culture, prostration on the ground was a sign of a humble approach. So how should we demonstrate a humble approach when we enter a confrontation? Well, how about speaking kindly, not accusingly? Now, let's not be pouring gasoline on the fire that's already there. How about confessing your own fault in the situation right up front? And go in with a truly humble attitude. Don't be bowing down humbly on the outside, but standing up proudly on the inside. Humility has to be genuine. Well, Esau responded to Jacob by running out to meet him, hugging and kissing him, and they both wept over this. Well, our next set of scriptures is Genesis 33, 8 through 11. I'm going to include verses 5 through 7, though. Esau asked a couple of questions. Who are all these people with you, and what are these flocks and herds that I see? And Jacob's answers helped advance the reconciliation between he and his brother by attributing his good fortune to God. Jacob also declared himself to be Esau's servant, and he came with this gift of flocks and herds. He even said that seeing his brother was like seeing the face of God. It seems that Jacob has really seen the light, and he's seeking forgiveness. You see, what started out as rivalry was headed toward retribution, but eventually ended in reconciliation. Well, the point of this lesson is that showing humility is critical to restoring a broken relationship. It doesn't matter if you feel that you're the one being wronged or the one who's at fault. Humility is the key. So let's do what Romans 12:18 says. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And you know what? That includes family, which can be the toughest, can't it? Now, we must remember, though, that when we're attempting reconciliation, our efforts might not be accepted. But we at least need to make the reach, right? We need to try. Whether the attempt is accepted or not, we need to try. Well, next week we're going to be looking at Joseph and his brothers. That's going to be Jacob's sons. And learn about family jealousy in Genesis 37 as our journey into family dysfunction continues. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to pray for and with your class.